Hello and welcome to V News. You're watching the Bulletins. Coming up next, we have your top stories. State President Trương Tấn Sang continues official visit to Cuba. Vietnam Global Investment Forum 2015 takes place in Hanoi. Vietnam attends ASEAN +3 ministerial meeting on transnational crime. Party General Secretary Nguyễn Phú Trọng hosted a reception in Hanoi on September 30th for Lao Ambassador to Vietnam, Somphone Sichalon. Our reporters with the full story. Party General Secretary Nguyễn Phú Trọng spoke highly of the outgoing ambassador's positive contributions during his term of office in Vietnam, helping to strengthen and enhance the traditional friendship, special solidarity, and comprehensive cooperation between the two countries. The party leader expressed his belief that in his new position, the ambassador would make more contributions to developing Vietnam-Laos special relations for prosperity of each country, as well as for peace, stability, cooperation and development in the region and the world at large. For his part, Ambassador Sichalon thanked Vietnamese party and state leaders and relevant agencies for creating favorable conditions, enabling him to accomplish his task. He also promised to do his utmost to nurture the bilateral relationship. State President Trương Tấn Sang has been on a two-day official visit to Cuba. The visit takes place at a time when the two countries are celebrating the 55th anniversary of diplomatic ties. Cuban President of the State Council and the Council of Ministers Raúl Castro welcomed the Vietnamese state leader in Havana on September 29th local time. Over the past 55 years, the bilateral comprehensive cooperation and solidarity have continually developed. Cuba was a pioneer in the international movement to support Vietnam's past struggle for national liberation. It currently pays significant attention to boosting multifaceted cooperation with Vietnam, particularly in agriculture, education, health, biotechnology, transport, and sports. Bilateral trade increased from $175 million in 2012 to $200 million in 2014. Vietnam mainly exports rice and consumer goods to Cuba, while buying medicine and biological products from the country. Following the welcome ceremony, President Trương Tấn Sang held talks with President Raúl Castro Ruz, seeking to bolster the fraternal solidarity and comprehensive cooperation between Vietnam and Cuba. The two leaders noted the need to maintain intergovernment committee meetings, strategic dialogues at the defense deputy ministerial level, and political consultancies between deputy foreign ministers. They held that the two sides should consider establishing mechanisms for joint research and a pilot production of medicines and new generation biohealthcare products, along with promoting cultural, sport, tourism, education and training partnerships. The same day, President Trương Tấn Sang laid a wreath at the late President Ho Chi Minh statue in Peace Park in Havana. Earlier, President Sang met with President of the National Assembly of People's Power of Cuba, Esteban Lazo. He affirmed Vietnam is resolved to continuously deepen the traditional solidarity and comprehensive cooperation with Cuba. He highly valued the cooperation between the two countries' legislative bodies, both bilaterally and multilaterally, as well as the Cuban National Assembly's contributions to the success of the 132nd Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, hosted by Vietnam earlier this year. He congratulated Cuba on its diplomatic victories and updated economic model achievements. The Cuban legislative leader said the Cuban National Assembly is determined to work together with its Vietnamese counterpart to enhance the bilateral relations, especially in economy, trade and investment, and at inter-parliamentary organizations, striving to make the legislative ties a crucial factor in the special Vietnam-Cuba relationship. Moving on to other news, Vietnam's macroeconomy has remained stable so far this year, with average consumer price index in the first 9 months up 0.74% year-on-year, with no sign of inflation. The Ministry of Planning and Investment announced this information at the regular cabinet meeting in Hanoi on September 30th.
According to the ministry, the country's GDP growth rate increased quarterly, standing at 6.5% in the first 9 months of this year, the highest recorded over the past 5 years. From January to September, progress was seen in industrial production, especially processing and manufacturing, retail of goods and services, credit growth, foreign exchange reserves, foreign direct investment attraction, as well as export and import. State budget collection was estimated at 633 trillion dong, roughly $30 billion, representing a year-on-year rise of 7%. Over the rebuild period, social welfare, political security and social order were also maintained, the ministry noted. However, the ministry pointed out a range of challenges and difficulties hindering the country's economic development, such as sharply dropping global prices of crude oil and goods, and complicated global financial market developments that have affected state budget collection from crude oil and exports. During the 2-day meeting, the cabinet members will also discuss the socio-economic development plan for 2016-2020, economic restructuring plan for 2016-2020, implementation of the state budget from 2011-2015, and orientation for the state budget for 2016-2020, among others.
The Vietnam Global Investment Forum took place in Hanoi on September 30th. Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng attended the event.
In his speech, Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng said Vietnam welcomes foreign businesses' stable and long-term investments and operations and considers their success as its own. The Prime Minister said Vietnam is entering a new era of development with a stable macroeconomy, faster growth pace, and lower inflation. The country has targeted a GDP growth rate of 6.5 to 7% and a trade increase of 12 to 15% annually between 2016 and 2020. To date, investors from 105 countries and territories have registered to pour $270 billion into over 19,000 operational projects. Up to $135 billion of that sum has been disbursed. Vietnam has signed 10 free trade agreements or FTA, the latest of which were inked with the Republic of Korea and the Eurasian Economic Union earlier this year. Prime Minister Dũng told participants that Vietnam is reforming public investment procedures to facilitate domestic and foreign investments in infrastructure development, prioritizing high-tech projects and those accompanied by supporting industries and services. He also mentioned the local financial market at the forum, which is being aligned with global equivalents. Vietnam has widened the foreign investor ownership rate in Vietnamese listed companies and lifted barriers to their investments in governments and corporate bonds.
Representatives of Vietnamese enterprises in Cambodia have called on the Vietnamese government to work with the Cambodian authorities so as to create more favorable conditions for them to conduct business in the host country. Speaking at a seminar in Phnom Penh on September 29th, the entrepreneurs also stressed their demands for connectivity and experience sharing in Cambodia. Meanwhile, Vietnamese Ambassador Thach Dư highlighted the great potentials for stronger economic cooperation between the two countries, describing Vietnamese businesses as a key channel to step up economic links in a rapid and sustainable manner, including firms operating abroad. He asked the Vietnamese Business Association in Cambodia to update its members on the two countries' new policies and regulations regarding nationality, finance, accounting, and tax and loan access, among others. The association should also team up with the Association of Vietnamese Investors in Cambodia, business associations at home, and commercial offices to give local businesses advice on investment opportunities and organize visits for them to survey the Cambodian market. Vietnam is also Cambodia's third largest trade partner, with bilateral trade value reaching $3.3 billion in 2014. The figure is expected to increase to $5 billion in the coming time. A workshop has been held in New Delhi, India, to promote Vietnamese agricultural products in this potential market. Our reporters with more details.
Addressing the event, President of the Indian Export Organizations, Rahan, reiterated that Vietnam is an important partner of India in the Southeast Asian region, and bilateral trade between the two countries has increased year on year. He also pledged to support Vietnamese enterprises entering the host market. Meanwhile, Vietnamese Deputy Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development Vũ Văn Tám held India's role in trade and growth of Vietnam's economy in general and the agricultural sector in particular. The government of Vietnam has continuously offered incentives for domestic trade promotion activities to boost bilateral and multilateral cooperation with international partners, including Indian firms.
Vietnam and India have potentials for cooperation in agriculture. The sector has been buoyed by the traditional friendship and cooperative ties. In recent years, India has assisted Vietnam in human resource development and technology transfer in animal farming and other fields.
With a population of 1.26 billion, the Indian market offers huge potentials for Vietnamese agricultural products such as tea, coffee, dragon fruit, and aquatic products.
The 7th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Transnational Crime +3 opened in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia on September 30th. Minister of Public Security General Trần Đại Quang led the Vietnamese delegation to the meeting. At the meeting, ministers in charge of security, police and internal affairs from ASEAN member countries and 3 partner nations, including China, Japan and the Republic of Korea, focused discussions on prioritized issues regarding the fight against terrorism, human trafficking, weapon and drug smuggling, and piracy, among others. They also agreed on measures to expand cooperation between law enforcement agencies in sharing information and experience in organized cross-border crime prevention and control. Minister Quang revealed that Vietnam has actively collaborated with law enforcement agencies of China, Japan and the Republic of Korea to investigate and deal with high-tech crimes and those related to human and drug trafficking. The Vietnamese minister proposed partner and dialogue countries make full use of the ASEAN +3 Cooperation Fund to implement projects on preventing and fighting cross-border crimes. He also suggested improving relevant agencies' capability to tackle non-traditional security challenges while continuing to expand the ASEAN +3 cooperation in transnational crime prevention and control. Vietnamese expatriates, their spouses and children are able to enter Vietnam without visas, as stipulated in a decree recently issued by the government.
Vietnamese expatriates, their spouses and children are required to have passports or international travel papers that are valid for at least 1 year and submit identification papers to authorized agencies abroad. Visa exemption papers, valid for a maximum of 3 years, will be attached into or issued separately from the passports, the decree said. According to the State Committee for Overseas Vietnamese Affairs, more than 4.5 million Vietnamese are working and living in 103 countries and territories worldwide.
The Vietnamese movie Hoa vàng trên cỏ xanh, known as Yellow Flowers on the Green Grass, has won the Best Film Award at the Silk Road International Film Festival in Fujian province of China. Let's take a look.
Hoa vàng trên cỏ xanh shared the Best Feature Film of the Year title at the festival with Russian movie Puppet Syndrome and Chinese film Saving Mr. Yu. The Vietnamese film is the latest movie by director Victor Vũ, based on the novel Tôi thấy hoa vàng trên cỏ xanh, or I See Yellow Flowers on the Green Grass by best-selling author Nguyễn Nhật Ánh. Set in the mid-1980s in rural Vietnam, the film follows the story of 2 young brothers who share everything but compete for the affection of the same girl. The nostalgic drama reveals the realities of life in Vietnam in that era, before the country's current economic boom began. The movie will be released in Vietnam on October 2nd.
And that was the end of our news bulletin. Thank you for your attention. For more information, please log on to our website at vietnamplus.vn. We'll see you soon.